Hi everyone, Heather here with PersephoneReturns.com, and I am back. I missed the past few weeks. I've been pretty busy in the past month. I've booked more readings than I have in the past, or in any 3 months combined really. So it's been a little crazy, but I'm back, and I wanted to make time to do a video for all of you on this really crazy supermoon in Gemini that's coming up on Sunday, which is the same day that Mercury stations to go retrograde in Sagittarius, in the opposite sign of this supermoon, this full moon that's happening. And so there's a lot going on with this full moon. There's a lot going on this weekend in terms of the astrology and the energy. And so, I wanted to come on here and give you guys an overview and talk about what it's going to be in terms of influence on your rising or your sun sign. So that way you guys have an idea of what's going on here. And I will be back doing my normal weekly videos where I talk about the astrology by sign for the week. I'm going to start doing that again for next week. I haven't decided yet if that's going to be something I do every weekend or on Tuesdays. That might be my new time. So I'll let you know. I'll let you know on Facebook. And if you're not on my Facebook, you can follow the link below in the description of this video to like my Facebook page. That's where you're going to see my weekly written forecasts, which I've been still keeping up on, where I give an in-depth written overview of the astrology for the week so you can get an idea of what's going on. I also post, deals, updates, little snippets about what's going on in the astrology. Sometimes I do live videos on there, so you'll get some additional information, content, whatever it is that you want to call it, if you jump onto Facebook and like my page. All right, so really, I'm just going to jump right into the supermoon because it's kind of crazy, and I want to be able to have enough time to get through all of the signs and tell you all what's coming up for you, because this is some really powerful energy. And I'm going to start with today, because today in general there's a lot of crazy, really powerful energy going on. First and foremost, we have Venus, which just moved into the sign of Sagittarius. Venus has been in the sign of Scorpio for the past few weeks, and Venus in Scorpio is a very, very different energy from Venus in Sagittarius, right? Venus in Scorpio is very passionate. It's very intense. It craves deep intimacy, deep intimacy in terms of emotional connection, communication, all of those types of things. It can be almost an obsessive energy where you become obsessed with your partner. You want to know what they're thinking, what they're doing, all of that. All the time. Whereas Sagittarius is completely different. You don't want to be holding too tightly onto your partner when Venus is in Sagittarius. It's more about broadening your horizons within your partnership and using partnerships as a means to expand and explore. And, it's really about doing things that are more adventurous and more expansive and more sort of philosophical, seeking things that are deeper, seeking deeper meaning in your relationships, but not in the same way that you seek it with Scorpio. With Scorpio, you'd be seeking deeper meaning through deep intimacy, right? Deep emotional connection. Whereas Sagittarius, you seek deeper meaning by looking at the broader meaning, the broader perspective, the broader purpose. Also, if you've been kind of focusing too closely on the details and on sort of the day-to-day when it comes to your relationships and your relationship experience, now is a time when you can sort of take a step back and see things from a broader, bigger, more expansive perspective. And so Venus in Sagittarius is really good for gaining perspective, for exploring those broader topics, those philosophical topics with your partner, and also really good for adventure. I know that Mercury is going to be going retrograde in Sagittarius as well, and that's going to make it a little difficult when it comes to our holiday travel plans, especially if you're traveling long distances. There have already been issues with flights and different things like that coming up even before the actual retrograde, during the pre-retrograde period. So I can tell that this is going to be an interesting time for everybody with your travel plans for the holidays, mine included, I'm sure. But this could, deepen your connection and deepen your intimacy and deepen your sort of commitment in your partnerships by going through this experience, by traveling, by having some sort of adventure. This is a really good time period for that, so just kind of keep that in mind. So if you are able to deal with the Mercury retrograde hiccups and not allow that to sort of ruin your time, plan for technical difficulties, communication difficulties, maybe car trouble, those types of things. But for the most part, traveling with your partners, traveling to in your relationships, that could be a positive experience during this time period. And the other thing going on right now is today Mars is opposing Uranus. So we have a very sort of electric, fiery chaotic, very extreme energy going on right now as well. You know, on like a global perspective, this could bring sort of fights, this could bring war, this could bring unexpected sort of rebellion, revolution, those types of energies. And of course, that's not necessarily that it's all going to happen right now today. This is an influence that lasts a few days. It's been coming in for the past couple of days. Today is when it's at its sort of peak, and you're still going to be feeling it for a few days after this as well. So I would say this is like a week-long influence, but it's most prominent today and through the weekend. And so when we have Mars opposing Uranus, it causes us to act impulsively, to act hastily, and to make really snap decisions, right? It's causing us to change things all at once. And that could be for better or for worse, right? You know, Mercury's about to be in retrograde. If you are a Mercury retrograde person and you're making changes right now, that's actually more beneficial than for, you know, the rest of us, especially if you're Mercury ruled. And, you know, people are going to be changing their minds. They're going to be making really quick decisions right now. And people are going to be feeling frustrated in certain areas of their lives. And the area that you're feeling frustration in shows you where it is that you actually need to instigate some sort of change. And we can get into that a little bit as we go through the signs. But really, this is going to be about making some sort of quick change, but not doing it so hastily, right? Because we really need to think things through and make sure we're making the right changes in the right ways at the right time right now. Because we do have a lot that's up in the air and a lot that's changing, a lot that we still have to wrap up from Saturn and Sagittarius as we move into this Mercury retrograde period. Because as I've already noted in previous videos, and maybe I'll post a link here because I did a really long in-depth video about this Mercury retrograde period and the connection with Saturn and Sagittarius on Astrolada's YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago. And the main thing that I talked about is that this is going to be a wrapping up of the energy of Saturn and Sagittarius, especially since January of 2016 is really where this is retrograding back to, is to that 13th degree that was hit for the first time by Saturn in January of 2016. So really, all that's developed in the Saturn and Sagittarius area of our lives since that time period is up for review. It's up for reevaluation. This is the last push, the last final chance to learn those Saturn and Sagittarius lessons before we have to move on to something different. And yeah, so if there's something that you haven't finished up in the area that's being touched by Saturn and Sagittarius, that's going to come back around, and you're going to have to deal with that over, you know, over the holidays especially. And, you know, Saturn moves out of Sagittarius into Capricorn on December 21st, which is the day of the winter solstice. So it's also the day that the sun moves from Sagittarius into Capricorn. So there's actually going to be a Sun-Saturn conjunction on the day that Saturn moves into Capricorn. It's going to be a very interesting energy. I'm definitely going to do a really in-depth video about that specific day because it is the winter solstice. It's already a very powerful day, and the energy is shifting in a very big way that day. And it'll be interesting. I don't necessarily see that as being like a crazy detrimental negative sort of experience, but I'll get into that when we get closer to it and what that's going to be about. But anyway, so we're coming into that Mercury retrograde period on Sunday, the same day as this supermoon. The other thing that's going on right now is that Jupiter's in trine with Neptune, which is bringing some positive energy into the mix. So even though there could be a little tension, a little frustration, a need to break free, to do something rebellious, to change something in some sort of way, Jupiter trine Neptune is giving us an optimistic, more idealistic outlook on what it is, what the potential is, right, over the course of you know, these next few weeks, and you know, whatever changes that we're trying to make sure that you're not being too overly optimistic or idealistic. Make sure that you're looking at things realistically, which can be difficult at this time. This is not a good time to make decisions for most people, but we'll get into that as well, just because of the nature of this full moon and the nature of the Mercury retrograde. But we might have to make some snap decisions today. We might have to make some snap decisions over the weekend. We might not have a choice. We might think that we can put it off, but you know, it's going to come up for us that we have to do it now. It could also be that we feel like we have to do it now, and that's not the best course of action. So you have to be very, very discerning and make sure that what you are planning is grounded in reality, right? That it's realistic. And so coming into Saturday, we'll start feeling that full moon in Gemini, but it really doesn't come exact until Sunday morning. So we'll feel it on Saturday. We'll see it Saturday. It'll be huge, big, beautiful in the sky. This is the largest supermoon of 2017. So we're closing out 2017 with kind of a bang here with all of this crazy energy this weekend. So when we have a supermoon, So it's kind of, it heightens our emotions, right? Because the moon represents our emotions. It represents our emotional experience. It represents our internal perception, our subjective perception of reality. And so the moon sort of rules our emotional experience, right? And when we have a supermoon, which is a moon that's just much closer to the earth than it normally is, so it appears bigger and brighter in the sky, Lynn Coiner, who is one of my teachers, actually refers to this as a crisis moon or a crisis lunation. Lunation is referring to like the new moon, but this would be a crisis like full moon, right? Because it's fraught with emotional crisis, because the moon is influencing us much more so than it normally is. When you think about the moon, but other than the sun, it's the most tangible and physically obvious influence on everything that's going on in our surroundings, right? It rules the tides. It influences animal behavior. It influences human behavior too. You know, my husband works in the emergency department, and certain full moons, especially when it's these crisis lunations, crisis full moons, when the moon is very close to the earth, are usually times when the emergency room is full, and you get a lot of, psychiatric patients at that time as well, because that's where you get the term lunatic, right? Because when the moon is full and, crazy things are going on with the moon, people can go a little crazy because it affects you on a deep emotional level, and it's something that's more internal, right? And so it's not something that's rational, logical, or linear, so people see it as being a little crazy. And so, it does have an influence on human behavior. It has an influence on the female menstrual cycle too, through our pineal gland, and the pineal gland and its ability to discern different frequencies of light. You can regulate your menstrual cycle by looking at the moon, even if you do that on a day-to-day basis and your body's healthy and you're not being influenced by all these external xenoestrogens and, things that mimic estrogen in the body that we are very apt to come into contact with. But that's sort of beside the point. So the moon has to do with our emotions, right? And so when we have a crisis full moon, or a moon that is a super moon that's very close to the earth, it is a very emotionally charged full moon. So people's emotions are going to be running high and running rampant. And in Gemini, people are going to be very emotionally expressive in terms of their communication. So people are going to be communicating and over communicating the way that they feel, right? The way that they internally feel about what's going on the outside. This is also going to be not the best time for making decisions, as I mentioned before, because this full moon is in an exact T-square with Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is nicely aspected, actually, besides this square right here to the moon and to the sun during the supermoon on Sunday, because it is still in a really nice trine with Jupiter, so that's still going on, so that helps it out a little bit. But anytime that you have the Neptune in square with anything, Neptune dissolves everything it touches. It makes everything non-tangible, non-linear, confusing, foggy, right? It's that Neptunian depth, that Neptunian fog. It makes things more intuitive, more emotional, more connected, more compassionate, and more loving, but it also makes it so you can't be very discerning. So it negates our ability to be rational, be logical. So normally when we have a full moon in in Gemini, it would be that we would be more able to rationalize and to analyze and to really think about and communicate our emotions. And when you have a square between Neptune and the moon here and the sun here in this T-square, it makes it so things are foggy, they're confusing, right? We're relying too much on our intuition and on our emotional experience to the point where we're not seeing things clearly. This could also be that we're falling into these rose-colored glasses that I like to talk about when we talk about Neptune, because Neptune very much brings on the rose-colored glasses. It causes people to see mostly what they want to see instead of seeing what's really going on. And so there is a potential here for making decisions that can lead to disillusionment, that can lead to sort of disappointment, that can lead us to realize later on down the line, once these sort of decisions come to fruition and the results are there, it's not quite what we thought it was going to be. And that is especially the case because Mercury is stationing on Sunday as well. So it's not the best day for mental activity. It's not the best day for clarity and discernment. It's not the best day to make decisions, even though there is some sort of change that needs to be made. If it's a change that you've already thought about and overthought to a certain extent, then that might be okay. If it's something something really hasty that hasn't been in the back of your mind that's just coming up all of a sudden, you know, I would wait and just make sure it's the right thing to do, right? Because the outcome's probably not going to be what you thought it was going to be. And so that's just kind of something to be aware of there. Also, Mercury stationing retrograde in conjunction with Saturn still, because Mercury came into an exact conjunction with Saturn on Tuesday of this week, so earlier this week. And it's going to be hitting Saturn in the retrograde period next week, and then it's going to be hitting it again when it goes direct. And so this is a threefold conjunction of Mercury and Saturn, which normally only happens once, right? You get one pass of this Mercury-Saturn conjunction. It's very fleeting. It's something that happens just once. And so usually it's something where it's like you have some sort of communication or something that you want to push through, or you get a communication that's disappointing, that's limiting in some sort of way. You feel the burden of limitation, restriction when it comes to your plans. And so you're wanting to move forward with something and it's not quite working. And usually this is a fleeting aspect that will last for just like one day. This is going to be going on all throughout the Mercury retrograde period. So we're going to be having to deal with the limitations and restrictions of Saturn when it comes to the plans that we're trying to move forward with, when it comes to our communications, when it comes to technology. This could be even more difficult Mercury retrograde than it normally is for technology, because Mercury is at its fall in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is not very tech savvy. If you know someone who has a lot of Sagittarius in their chart, they're more about being out in the world. Right? They're more about philosophy. They're not about this like analytical stuff. They're not about, you know, sort of surface level communication, all that type of stuff. But they're not, the Mercury stuff is sort of vague to them. It's confusing because they think more in bigger picture and broader steps. And so we can sort of lose sight of the details when it comes to Mercury and Sagittarius already, but when it's in retrograde, that is even more so the case. So just make sure you're double, triple checking everything, paying extra attention to the details. But this is really a good time for wrapping things up, right? For tying up loose ends, getting things together. So it's not all bad. But there could be some limitations, some restrictions, some burden that you're feeling like you want to move forward with something, and there is something that's preventing you from moving forward. And it's usually going to be a leftover Saturn and Sagittarius lesson that this is the final chance to work through it. So, you know, it's time to get on that, right? The only other thing that's going on is that the moon is going to be in conjunction with Jupiter. And so again, we can be overly optimistic, overly generous. We can have difficulty saying no. So if there is a decision to be made, if somebody asks something of us or asks our opinion on something or wants us to do something for them, it can be a little bit more difficult to say no because we do want to be generous, you know, with our time and our energy and our emotions. And the other thing too is that we can be, normally when we have the moon in an in conjunction, it can indicate emotional repression. Like I said before, though, the moon in Gemini likes to talk about its emotions, analyze it, think about it, you know, talk about it, express it. And with Jupiter in an in conjunction, we could be over expressing our emotions where it's been done to death and we're overthinking it way too much. And so this is not a very good time for emotional clarity and clarity on how we feel about things. And so that's just something to be aware of as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I'm going to get into the forecast by sign. And I'm going to, of course, start with Aries, because Aries people, they tend to, they're a little impatient, right? I hope my Aries friends don't mind me saying that, but, you know, they like to be first. They like things to be fast. And I got a lot of Aries, you know, clients and viewers and friends because I do speak really quickly. And so Aries and Aries Rising people tend to gravitate toward that because they don't like when you're going really slow and talking like this, you know. They like it to be fast because their minds work quickly and they move very quickly. Okay. And so before I get into this, I'm just going to remind you all that this is a general forecast for all 12 of the signs. This is not going to account for everything that's going on in your chart. If you have, like, you know, a really difficult Pluto aspect going on, that's going to overpower some of the positive stuff. If you have something that's super positive, it might overpower the negative stuff. So this is a general broad forecast that is not taking into account, obviously, your individual birth chart. And so if you want a birth chart reading for the transits that are coming up, and to know what's going on in your own chart and in your own life, you can always book a reading with me. The link is in the description below, and my website is persephonereturns.com. I'm also right now doing a discount for the holidays on my digital gift certificates. So I do offer gift certificates for gift readings, and you know, astrology readings always make a really unique, really fun gift for people. I really like when people buy astrology readings for their friends and for their family members, because that's always kind of fun to do, right? It's a nice little treat. And so if you do want to get a reading for a friend, a family member for the holidays, you can get a gift certificate at 15% off, and I will also put that link in the description below this video. So get in now too if you do want a live reading with me. I only have, I think, 2 appointments available before the holidays because I will be traveling mid-December. So if you want to do a live reading with me before the holidays, I would recommend booking this weekend, because I'm almost completely booked up. I do book up really quickly, and I will be doing recorded readings though throughout the entire month of December. So if you want to do a pre-recorded video reading, I can do that for you at any time, but the wait time is about 3 weeks for one of those as well. So if you want to get it in before the holidays, now is the time to do it. And yeah, so just send me an email, book a reading, whatever it is you want to do, and we'll work it out. But anyway, so I'm going to get into the forecast for all 12 signs for this full supermoon in Gemini, biggest supermoon of the year. And so this is going to show you where there could be some sort of crisis, some sort of confusion, miscommunication, over-identification with your emotions. This also shows us anytime we're talking about a full moon, we're talking about coming back into balance, right? Because we're talking about 2 seemingly opposing energies. So this is a time period when we've been focusing, you know, this month, because it's Sagittarius season, on the broader, bigger picture, on the more expansive sort of vantage points, on adventure, on travel, on philosophy, you know, on the bigger picture. And so now we're bringing it back down to sort of the pieces, the sums that make up the whole, right? So we're talking about things that are more analytical, more sort of detail oriented, those types of things. And also we're talking more about communication, right? It's you know, Sagittarius, they communicate very bluntly, right? So this is about communicating in a way that is a little bit more gentle, where you're thinking about who it is that you're talking to when you're trying to appease that person. This is also very playful energy, so it could be an energy of wanting to go out and play, right? Wanting to do things that are fun, that are exciting, wanting to sort of, you know, do things that you feel curious about. It's about doing a lot of different things because they feel fun to you, right? Or because you're curious about it. This is also bringing us back into the mental plane, the plane of the analytical mind, which is a little bit cloudy right now, right? So this is it's gonna amp it up a little bit, but at the same time, we're feeling foggy, we're feeling confused, and the confusion, I'll tell you where that's coming from as well. And so let me get into the so for Aries and Aries Rising, so primarily listen for your rising sign. Sun sign is secondary. If you want to listen for your moon, that's fine too. That's going to be a different thing. It's going to be more internalized, but I always recommend that people listen to their rising sign first, their sun sign second. And so rising sign in Aries. So Aries and Aries rising, you know, this Mars opposition to Uranus is actually happening in your first house. And if you are a later Aries birthday, or if your rising sign is the later degree of Aries, this is going to bring a lot of frustration, a lot of need to break out, a bigger need for freedom, for change, which you've already been feeling, you know, for a while now. But this is sort of stimulating that need for change, that need to break out, that need to break free. And in terms of this full moon is actually happening in your third house. So this is a lot of energy surrounding communication and miscommunication. You know, there can be a lot of emails, text messages, phone calls, a lot of energy surrounding communication coming your way over the course of this weekend. It's going to be a time for you to communicate your thoughts, to talk to people, to get out there, to also, you know, this has to do with merging the higher thought processes, merging the bigger picture with the day-to-day experience and the day-to-day communications that make up the bigger picture. This could also be you sort of working on travel plans or something along those lines and feeling very foggy, very confused. The confusion here is actually coming from your 12th house, so it's something deeper, right? So there's something going on a deeper level, on an intuitive level, on a level that is below the surface, beyond this realm. It's more subjective, it's more unconscious, that is blocking you and confusing you. So there's a need here to really be clear on what it is that you are doing in terms of your communication, your decision making, because that could get a little messed up. Also for you in particular, your Saturn is, right now, Saturn is right now transiting the 9th house, and that is the house, of course, of long distance travel, of higher education. You might be wrapping up your studies for the year, or you might be graduating, right? That's the time. And this would be a really great time for you to do that, but you might have to go back, double check something, right? You might have to go back and redo something in that area. This is also going to be a little bit more difficult for you as opposed to other signs when it comes to your travel plans for the holidays. So if you are traveling, just make sure that you're accounting for the fact that there might be delays, there might be little hiccups that come up for you. But in general, this is sort of a culmination point of the new moon that actually began in your 8th house, because it would have been in Scorpio, but we're coming back into balance, right? So this is a culmination point, so you might receive some really beneficial communication that's highlighting, some of your, whatever it is you've been working on, right? It's highlighting whatever you've been working on in the 9th house of like higher education, broader philosophy, teachers, adventure, those types of things. So, focusing on communication, connecting with siblings, that could also be a really beneficial time for that, or a time when that might actually just show up and might happen for you. So yeah, it's a culmination point of some sort of communication, something that you started in the area of communication, or something that you started in higher learning that's culminating over here in the 3rd house, where you're going to be getting a lot of communication. And this is also really good for marketing, for putting things out into the public, and when it comes to, again, like communicating, right? And this is good for if you've been trying to learn some practical skills, you might get some sort of culmination point of that as well. All right. So for Taurus and for Taurus Rising, let's see here. So for Taurus and Taurus Rising, so the full moon is actually happening in your 2nd house, which is finances. So you might be receiving some sort of benefits when it comes to your money, your financial situation. This is the culmination point of something that was started in the 8th house, which would have had to do, and also the 7th house, right? Because again, that was where this whole thing started for this lunar cycle, was actually in the 7th house. So something that was started in partnership that might be bringing in money, finances, resources to you. It could also be, that you've been working really hard to pay off debts. This could be something involving joint finances, where you're coming back into balance when it comes to your own hard work, your own labor, your own efforts. But there is some sort of confusion coming from the 11th house. And that could be, friends, social rewards, communications from your friends. Maybe it is that you want to be overly generous when it comes to your partnerships. You want to help someone out, you're not really quite sure what's going on there. But I would not recommend loaning or borrowing money this weekend if that is something that you're thinking about doing. But this could really be a really nice culmination point where you could get some sort of reward for some sort of effort that you've been putting in terms of trying to create wealth for yourself, trying to save. Investments could be paying off for you right now, especially if you invested in Bitcoin, right? Maybe that's it for you very frugal Taurus people. But yeah, so anyway, so this is really good for material comfort, right? For feeling comfortable in your money and your finances, for enjoying sensory pleasures, for enjoying things that are very tangible and comfortable and luxurious. So now's the time to do that, right? And you can be a little bit more prone to escapism through physicality right now, and that's actually okay. So yeah, have a good time this weekend. Enjoy yourself. I wouldn't spend any money sort of foolishly, because that purchase might not be what you thought it was going to be. So just be very careful about making large purchases, but definitely enjoy yourself. Enjoy the nicer things, enjoy the rewards of all the hard work and all the effort that you've been putting in, especially recently, and especially with Saturn transiting your 8th house over the course of the past 2.5 years, because you've probably been working on finances, debt, those types of things, creating a better situation for yourself. And if you did it right, now is the time when you're starting to reap the benefits and reap the rewards of that. And so that'll become apparent, especially over the course of the next month and a half. Gemini and Gemini Rising. This is all about you, right? This is a supermoon in Gemini. Your emotions might be really high during this time period. You might feel like there is some sort of crisis going on, especially involving your relationships, especially involving who you are and what you are, and your personality, your persona, how you project your energy out into the world. So your willpower could be affected by this full moon too. And there could be some confusion surrounding your work, your career, your public reputation. So that's just something to be aware aware of as well. But in general, this is a culmination point that's highlighting you. So you could get some sort of recognition for some work that you've been doing, or for some sort of project that has come to fruition. You could have been a little overly optimistic when it comes to some sort of work project, especially that you were doing this week, right? So if you were working really hard on something this week and you had high expectations for it, you know, this could be a time when you might have been a little let down, and you might realize that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. You might be feeling a little overly emotional when it comes to those circumstances. But, you know, in general, you've been doing a lot of work when it comes to your relationships, right? Your long-term relationships, your marriage partnerships, those types of things. A lot of developments over the past 2.5 years in that area of your life, and that's being highlighted right now. And so this is a time when you can sort of come back into balance. This is a weekend where you're focusing more on you, your own self-interest, and your own needs. So you are being highlighted right now. So whatever it is that you feel that you need, now is the time to take care of yourself, right? To take care of yourself and to not get too worked up about, you know, if there was a project that you had high expectations for, like I mentioned, in terms of your work or your health, and it's not working out the way that you thought it was. This is a very fleeting sort of aspect. It'll get better. It'll resolve itself. I wouldn't be too overly concerned about that, because there is a tendency here to overthink it and become overly emotional about whatever it is this project would have been, if that is the case for you. This is not obviously going to be the case for every single Gemini that exists out there in the world, but for some of you it will be. The other thing is Mercury stationing retrograde. So again, you're going to be having to revisit a lot of the energies, a lot of the different lessons and hard work that you've been putting in when it comes to your relationships. So if the relationships that weren't working for you over the past 2.5 years, you might have had to cut cords with those people, and those people might be coming back out of the woodwork, right? You might be hearing from them again. You might have to revisit that energy. There's also, if there are people that you should have cut out of your life and you didn't, now is a time when that's going to be very apparent over the next couple of weeks, especially during the holidays. So you're going to have to really cut cords with people. And if you did sort of solidify a commitment in partnership, with which a lot of people with Saturn running through their 7th house might have done, or you might have come into a new committed relationship, this is going to highlight any adjustments that need to be made in that area. This could also just be highlighting the rewards of all the hard work you did if you put in a lot of work too. So you're going to get a combination of both. You're going to start to see the benefits of the work you put in. You're going to start to see the results, and you're going to be wrapping things up, tying up loose ends when it comes to your relationships. All right, guys, and so Cancer and Cancer Rising, this is happening in your 6th and in your 12th house. So you've probably been working really hard over the past 2.5 years specifically, but, you know, especially this month, a lot of the stuff that you've been working on has probably been coming to fruition. You've started to see some of the results, but you're also starting to see what needs to be worked on, reevaluated, reviewed. And so this holiday season for you is going to be a busy time when it comes to your work, when it comes to your day-to-day routines and activities that you need to do, your responsibilities, you know, in your work life, and also in your health. You might have been working on your health for the past 2.5 years, and so you're starting to finally see the results of that. And so, you know, this weekend is a time for you to retreat inward, because the moon is in your 12th house. So this is about going inward, retreating. You know, spending time in solitude would be absolutely beneficial for you right now. You know, I wouldn't recommend making a lot of like plans this weekend or trying to overthink things, right? This is a time for you to rest your mind. Don't try too hard to make decisions. Don't try too hard to figure things out. This is a time to rest and retreat, and I would definitely recommend, if you can, spend a good amount of time like on your own or on solitude or sort of hiding out. This is a really good weekend for spiritual exploration, for retreat, for you know, exploring like meditation, those types of things as well. So separating yourself from, you know, the rest of the world, and separating yourself from your work, because that is very much needed for you, Cancer people especially, you know, especially Cancer rising. So just be aware of that. And yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, a little bit of work over the holidays, more than you might have wanted, but this is a break for you to take some time out prior to having to jump back in. And so it'll be a good weekend for that. Okay, and so Leo and Leo rising. So Leo rising people, you're actually going to, this is going to be in your 5th house and in your 11th house. So this is a time for you to focus on your friends, to focus on your social networks. This could be a really good time for you to go out and spend time with your friends. I would be wary though of the potential for people to be a little bit more deceptive in terms of your friends. You could end up with somebody lying to you or deceiving you in some sort of way, or maybe you're not seeing someone as clearly as you normally would. So that's just kind of something to be aware of. But in general, this is a good weekend for you to spend with your friends. There might be some sort of emotional crisis that comes up when it comes to your friendships though. Where you might realize that somebody wasn't who you thought they were or something along those lines. So that's something to be aware of as well. But in general, this is a good weekend to do anything that needs to be done with your friends, right? If it is that there's an emotional crisis, if there is some sort of catharsis needed, if there is some sort of resolution that needs to be had or come to, you know, if that's what comes up, that's what comes up. But in general, I think this could be a good weekend to spend time with your friends. And also, you know, you've been working really hard in the 5th house area. So this has to do with the things that you love to do, your passions, your creativity. This could also be about children and you know, this is the house of entrepreneurs. So if you own a business, you might have been working really hard to establish yourself in your business. And so this is a time to take a break and to spend time with your friends instead, right? To stop focusing so much on your own creative passions, on your own creative pursuits. If you've been, you know, bogged down by childcare and spending a lot of time focusing on your children, this is time to go out and be with adults, right? That's what this weekend will bring. I don't recommend drinking though. If you do go out, I don't recommend that for anyone this weekend. This is not a weekend to escape through drugs, alcohol, those types of things. That'll bring nothing good for anyone. So don't do that. Maybe just have a glass of wine, you know, but don't get too crazy because, you know, that could bring up some issues. But overall, a good weekend. Let's see. Okay, so for Virgo and Virgo Rising, this is actually going to be occurring in your 4th house and in your 10th house. So this is some sort of culmination point, and when it comes to your work and your career, your public reputation, your public life, you probably had a lot of change, transition, a lot of heavy energy, a lot of work that needed to be done in terms of your 4th house, which has to do with your family, your roots, your property, your home. And so this has been a period of 2.5 years of dealing with ancestral karma, dealing with letting go of relationships, letting go of different circumstances in your home situation, different responsibilities and structures that you've created for yourself that were no longer serving you. Those would have been something that you needed to work through and let go of. It would have been a difficult time when it comes to your house, your home, all of that. And so you've been focusing a lot on your roots and on your family and on taking care of your family and on taking care of your property, taking care of your home, spending time, you know, working on your home. You might have had to move. You might have had to buy a new home. You might have had to renovate, whatever it is, you know, it depends on your personal circumstances and situation. You might have moved, you know, that might have been a thing too. But really, this is a time for you to go focus on your career a little bit more. Maybe you'll get some recognition this weekend for the effort that you've been putting in when it comes to your career and your public reputation. You know, there could be a communication that you've been waiting for or something that you might have been a little overly optimistic about, and that might not turn out the way that you thought it would. And so that's something to be aware of as well. Also, don't be too generous when it comes to your communication. People may have questions for you. Don't be afraid to put up good boundaries, to say no, that I can't do this. No, this isn't the right time. No, I need to focus on myself. I need to focus on my work. I need to focus on my family. And yeah, so, you know, over the course of the Mercury retrograde, which is starting also on Sunday, this is going to highlight the need to wrap up things when it comes to your home, your family situation, your roots, any of those ancestral patterns that you haven't worked through, any of those family issues from childhood that have come up that you haven't really resolved or dealt with. Whatever it is that you haven't worked on is going to be coming back up for review for you to tie up loose ends and wrap things up over the course of you know, the Mercury retrograde, which happens over the holidays. And we will get into that really deep when I talk about the holiday astrology, which I'm going to be doing probably either next week or the week after that. And for Libra and Libra Rising, so this is going to be a very powerful energy when it comes to your beliefs, right? This has to do with your beliefs about God, the universe, religion, philosophy, how you discern greater meaning, greater purpose to this reality, to this life, to what it is that we're living. You've been focusing a lot on day-to-day communication, day-to-day experience. You might have had opportunities for travel and things like that as well, you know, coming up, but really really this has been, you've had to focus a lot on communication, on figuring things out, on bureaucracy, on paperwork, on, you know, all of that stuff. So taking care of all the details. And so part of the thing that you might have been doing is escaping, you know, through travel and things like that, escaping from the day-to-day grind, because it's felt heavier for you over the past 2.5 years. And so whatever needs to be wrapped up in terms of like bureaucratic stuff, paperwork, you know, this could also have to do with your relationship with your siblings, those types of things. That's going to be coming up during that Mercury retrograde period for you to, you know, go back over, review, work on, wrap up, so you can move on to dealing with family issues now and home and family issues. That's what's going to be happening when Saturn moves into Capricorn. But right now for the full moon is actually in the 9th house. So this is actually a good time for you to potentially, you know, travel, take a short, you know, trip for the weekend or something, or to, you know, explore higher philosophies, explore higher meaning, higher purpose, look into something that's religious, philosophical, sit down with a really good book, where you can like learn something from it. You know, there's a lot of different things that this could be for you. This could also be that there was some sort of money that was supposed to come to you, or you were overly optimistic, or a little bit overly concerned with finances, and whatever it is, it didn't quite pull through. And so there could be a little like minor disappointment where maybe you thought you'd have more money for travel and that didn't quite work out that way, right? Or you might have thought that you might have some more money for higher education for your school. You know, maybe you were applying for like student loans or something, or grants, and you didn't get what you thought that you would. But it's not going to hinder you from actually moving forward and doing what you need to do. So you know, just if that is the case and you feel a little like a mini emotional crisis over it, you know, it'll be fleeting, it'll pass, and you'll be able to resolve it and figure it out. All right, so Scorpio Rising. So, you know, there's a lot of energy that's been in Scorpio. Jupiter's in Scorpio. This is really going to be about your 2nd house and your 8th house, though. So it could be, so this is going to be, first off, we're wrapping up this energy of Saturn and Sagittarius in your 2nd house, which is great because, you know, things are starting to resolve and work out when it comes to your finances. And so part of this is highlighting, you know, all of the hard work you've put in, all of the results that you're finally starting to see in terms of all the hard work that you've been doing for creating money, creating wealth for yourself, paying off loans, paying off debts, creating a savings for whatever it is that you needed to save for. Maybe you've just been having to adhere to a budget because you needed to save for something big or wanted to save for something big, and now you're finally starting to see the results and you might be able to buy it soon. Maybe you've had a lot of debt that you've been working on paying off for the last 2.5 years. Maybe you've just been having to work harder for your resources and for your money for whatever reason based on whatever circumstances, but now you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel and you're starting to see those results. And now is a time when, you know, those lessons might come back around once or twice over the course of this Mercury retrograde. So you're going to have to revisit and redo that budget. You're going to have to rethink, you know, your plans when it comes to your financial situation. And over this weekend, there could be something that comes up that requires you to either rely on someone else's money, someone else's resources. It could take money away from you in some sort of way, or it could just be the culmination point where you start to see, you know, the results, especially in the 8th house. So it could be like your partner brings in a little extra money unexpectedly. It could be that you know, you get to pay off one of your debts, or you get some sort of recognition or some sort of reward for a lot of the effort that you've been putting in. But it comes from something from the outside, right? So that would be like paying off a debt or something. But this is a very empowering transit for you this weekend. It could bring up some crisis because it is a crisis full moon in Gemini in your 8th house. So it will bring up your deep-seated fears, especially about power and control issues, especially about money and finances and resources. Those things will come up and you'll have to deal with that. But for the most part, you know, this is, you know, it's a good thing. It's, you know, this is a fleeting transit. If there is an emotional crisis tied to this, you know, it is what it is. You'll work through it. You'll move past it. And it also could be that you're not able to see things quite as clearly as you might want to. So it might just be that you're not seeing it clearly, and the crisis isn't really actually even a crisis. It's just that you're deceiving yourself, right? You're not seeing it the right way. And so after this weekend, it might become a little bit more clear, especially when Mercury comes and hits Saturn again next week, which we'll talk about when we do the weekly forecast. All right, guys, so Sagittarius and Sagittarius Rising. Let's see here. So for Sagittarius and Sagittarius Rising, this is actually happening in your 7th house. So this is really good for your relationships. This is some sort of culmination point in your relationships. You've been focusing a lot on you and your own responsibilities and your own burdens and the things that you need to do and you need to create out in the world. It's been a lot about you because you've been reinventing yourself over the past 2.5 years. You've been having to let go of old paradigms, old structures that you've created for yourself that are not working for you anymore. And you've been having to have this like big major cosmic reset in all areas of your life. And so now this is the time when you can focus on the other, right? Focusing on, you know, your partner in marriage or in relationship, focusing on other people, even if it's just, you know, close friendships, close relationships, business partnerships. This is not a time where you're focusing on you. You're focusing on everyone else and the people that are closest to you, the people that you love. So you're shifting your focus and your attention this weekend, which can be very nice for, you know, romance, for partnership, for reestablishing that bond in partnership. And so, yeah, that can actually be very beneficial for you in a lot of different ways. And over the course of the Mercury retrograde, you're going to have to revisit some of those issues, especially since January of 2016 and beyond, when it comes to Saturn and Sagittarius and those lessons that you had to do. And a lot of it was about taking responsibility for yourself, right, and for how you present yourself and show up in the world. And it also probably affected your relationships, your career, your home, your family, a lot of change, right? It was a big overhaul. Anytime you have Saturn transiting the first house, 12th and the first house are the most important Saturn transits. They're usually pretty jam-packed with activity and change and surrender and all sorts of fun stuff and hard work, of course. So yeah, so you're seeing the culmination point, you're seeing the results of all the work that you put in these areas, and so that can be actually very positive for you, and it's a good time to spend with your partner. All right, guys, Capricorn and Capricorn Rising. So this full moon is actually happening in your 6th house. So you might have been spending more time focusing inward, right? You're spending time away from the world, spending time in solitude. For whatever reason, based on whatever it was that was going on in your life, you've been sort of away from the world for the past 2.5 years, really, but this month really is highlighting your inner world. It's hiding your need for solitude, for seclusion, to spend time on your own, right? To spend time in your own space, away from work, away from the world. And, you know, being a Capricorn or Capricorn Rising, you're probably a very hardworking and responsible person. And so, you know, sometimes you need a break. And so over the course of the past month, that's been highlighted. But this weekend, you're going to have to, something's going to be highlighted in terms of your work. So you might actually get some results of some of the work that you've been doing. This could also bring up some sort of emotional crisis when it comes to your health, when it comes to your work, when it comes to your job or your coworkers. So that's something to be aware of as well. This could also bring up some sort of like maybe you thought you were going to get some sort of reward for the work that you put in, and you were a little overly optimistic about what was going to happen, and you get disappointed or let down in some sort of way. So that's something that could potentially come up, but it's not, it's fleeting, right? It's just your perception of it that is the issue here. So you'll be able to work through that and resolve that. There could be some confusing communications coming in as well that sort of confuse your ability to do the work that you need to do or to move forward with whatever it is that you need to move forward with. The confusion could cause some sort of crisis. And so, you know, communication right now for you is very foggy, very confusing over the course of this weekend. And with Mercury transiting your 12th house, your mind is not here in the world. And so decision making, not, I wouldn't recommend this for Capricorn people in particular. You're usually very grounded, very rational, very logical, very pragmatic in your thought processes and in the actions that you're taking right now. Maybe not so much, right? Maybe you think you are, but you're not quite clear. So there's a lot of fogginess, a lot of confusion. That'll start to clear up. Especially after December, and this weekend it's kind of a little bit amplified, so I would just steer clear of making any important decisions this weekend if you can. You know, you might have to do something, you might have to change something, but if you can hold off, of all people, I would say Capricorn should probably hold off and make sure you're clear in what it is that you're doing. All right, Aquarius and Aquarius Rising. So for Aquarius Rising people, this is happening in your 5th house, so that's actually really nice. You might have been, you know, focusing on your friends, your social networks. You know, there's been a lot of energy around sort of surrendering and letting go of friendships that are not serving you over the past 2.5 years, and that's been highlighted, the results of that, right? So you haven't been as social for the past couple of years as you normally are, especially being an Aquarius rising. You know, the social butterflies, the people that like to spend a lot of time in groups of people with their friends and all these types of things. You haven't been doing that as much because you've been putting in a lot of work, and also you've been getting rid of people that don't serve your integrity, that don't serve your highest purpose, that are more baggage than they're worth, right? And so now is a time when you can focus more on you, your own self-interest, the things that you love to do out in the world. This is highlighting your need for play, for romance. This could be a very romantic weekend for you. You know, this could be some sort of, this could be a good time to spend in partnership, to spend doing something that's playful, that's fun, you know, because it's in Gemini, it's a fun-loving sign. This could also indicate, you know, with this in conjunction to Jupiter, that you were expecting something and you had high expectations when it came to your work, your career. Maybe there was a job opportunity or something that came up that you didn't quite get. And so, you know, that is something that could lead to an emotional crisis, a little bit of a disappointment, a little bit of a downer over this weekend. But, you know, that's fleeting. It's going to pass, and you're going to be able to sort it out moving forward, especially after the holidays. It's not going to seem like such a big thing. So if that is something, or maybe you got your hopes up and you got the job opportunity and then it's not really all it's cracked up to be, right? That could be another thing that was going on. So it just kind of depends on where you're at and what you've been doing. But in general, good for romance, good for play, good for exploration. There could be a confusing situation about money that might hinder your ability to feel good, to, you know, play and to expand, to do those things that we just talked about. But, you know, if it's because you're not seeing it clearly, right? So try not to let it get to you this weekend. You'll see it much more clearly after the weekend. This could be a good weekend to let loose and play if you can sort of let go of the money, the career, all that kind of stuff. Not that you have to let go of your money and your career, but letting go of worrying about that over the course of this weekend, because that would cause or could cause some sort of crisis. And that doesn't mean that anything bad is happening. This is just your perception of it, and you're not seeing it clearly right now. So you'll see it much more clearly later on. Pisces and Pisces Rising. So for you, this full moon is actually going to be in your 4th house. And so this is highlighting the need to go back home, to spend time in seclusion and with, like, at home, being cozy, watching Netflix this weekend. That would be the perfect way to utilize this energy, because, you know, you've been working really hard on your career, right? All the Pisces rising people in particular have been having Saturn transiting the 10th house. So this is having to put in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort toward your career, toward your public reputation, and you're finally starting to see the results, right? It's not all coming at once. It takes a lot of time, but you're starting to see the results. And so over the course of this holiday season, you're going to have to go back, redo, re-edit, revisit things. You're going to have to tweak it a little bit. You're going to have to make it better, make it your own, make it more in alignment with your integrity. But this weekend is time to take a little bit of a break, right? It's highlighting your need to spend time at home, to get your home in order, to get your roots in order, to take time out, right? To take time to rest, to take time to spend with family, with your children if you have children. You know, focusing on your home life and on your family situation is going to be much more important to you during this time period. It also could be that there was some sort of opportunity that might have you might have been banking on for travel, for higher education, for getting a new teacher, something along those lines, and maybe that's not coming through for you. And so you might feel a little down, you might feel like there's a little bit of an emotional crisis coming on, but it's not what you think it is. And so, you know, this is another sign where I would say that you're not seeing things quite as clearly as you normally would. Being a Pisces and a Pisces rising, you're prone to fantasy, to sort of illusion, disillusionment, those types of things anyways. And you know, having Neptune in your 1st house as part of this T-square here just indicates that, you know, things might be a little foggy and confusing. You might be trying to make decisions for your career and for your public life or for your home and for getting, you know, things back in order in your home, and you can't quite see how to do it, right? And it's not working for you right now, and that's okay. This is not the weekend to figure it out, because it's going to be very, very hard to do so, especially if you're coming from it from an analytical sort of viewpoint, and even from an intuitive viewpoint. You know, everything's kind of crazy right now, so just take some time out, take some time to rest. This is the weekend to do it, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's Pisces. And I think that's pretty much everyone. Oh, hi, Griselda. Hello. So, yeah, that's everyone. Aries through Pisces. And again, if you want to book a reading with me, you can do so at the description in the link below. I'm still doing the gift certificates 15% off. That'll be going on now through January 1st. And again, if you want to book a reading with me, you absolutely should do it now if you want to get in before the holidays, because I only have a couple of appointments left for live readings and I want to give them to you guys first. I work on a couple other different platforms, and so I'm giving them to my platform first. So first come, first serve, guys. But anyway, so I will see you guys in a couple of days. I'm going to be doing the weekly forecast for next week, and I hope you all have a really beautiful weekend. Let me know how you're doing in the comment section with this full moon energy, because it is intense. And yeah, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye.